Team, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome back to Harvey Mudd. We're excited for you to join us for this talk. We had Dr. Kamau Bobb out here last fall. Raise your hand if you were at that talk. What? Okay, it was in a colloquium, and we were like, do you know what? This was not a big enough audience. More people are going to want to hear Kamau talk. And so we're like, Kamau, what if you flew out here very early in the morning and then took a red eye to a meeting in D.C. the next morning? And so we feel very fortunate that Kamau Bobb is here. So Kamau went to Berkeley. Studied mechanical engineering, and then also did a PhD at Georgia Tech in education policy. I'll try not to screw any of this up. Kamau has worked at the National Science Foundation, and also now is back at Georgia Tech, working as the founding director of the Constellations Center for Equity in Computing. And I just couldn't be happier that we get to have Kamau join us here today. Please join me in welcoming him.
Ooh. Thank you.
Yeah.
Love you.
Yeah.
Is this working? Wow, it is. Hello, how are y'all? Good. Apparently it's welcome back to school, is that right? Yeah. Some enthusiasm, welcome back to school, right? I'm saying. You got faculty whose job it is to teach you, so you need to be happy to be here. So I appreciate your having me back. This feels like one of those things. It was just last year, so it feels almost like it was just yesterday. So a little bit felt like it was too soon, but Colleen and Ron were like, look, just come back and it'll be nice. But here's what I wanted to do. A couple things. The last time I was here, for those of you, it seems like many of you weren't here, we were talking about what is the responsibility of being elite. And this particular school, to me, is elite in all sorts of ways. But since then, a number of things have happened. So let me give you just a little bit of introduction. So as Colleen pointed out, I was at the National Science Foundation. And the National Science Foundation, for those of you who don't know, it's one of the federal granting agencies that supports basic research in STEM fields. And then since then, at Georgia Tech, the Constellations Center for Equity in Computing, which I am the director of, the intention of it is to build computing educational infrastructure for other universities that don't have large CS faculty and for high schools that don't have CS teachers. So the idea basically is that we want to build a structural artifact to help computing education. But the philosophy behind it, which is what I'm going to get to, is that increasingly, as you probably well know and perhaps surmise, this STEM idea is out there. You know what STEM is, yeah? Given that y'all some fancy students and such. But STEM is out in this lexicon. Everybody wants a STEM education. And in many places, this STEM idea is there in such a way that you feel like it's something that you can actually get. So people talk about it like they sell it. Like, yo, I got some STEM, and I can give you some, and you can get some, and you go to school, and you can get a STEM degree. It doesn't work like that, as you well know. It's science, it's technology, engineering, mathematics, and computing. So the joke that is continually useful is that the C is silent, the computing part is silent. But here's the deal. Atlanta, which is where I live, part of this whole talk is going to be a little bit somber. And it's about black people, but I'm telling you what is on my mind at the moment. This is a very vulnerable moment. I'm sharing with you some things that I'm thinking about personally. So in Atlanta, we are one of the top 20 cities that's a finalist for Amazon. So as you know, Amazon is throwing its weight around the whole country. And basically everybody is clamoring for Amazon to host Amazon's HQ2. But what does that mean? A lot of it has been pretty secret. It's not clear exactly what they want, except to say in the request for proposals that they've submitted to cities, they just say that you have to have a high-end technical educational infrastructure because the workforce that they need requires people with these amorphous STEM skills. They want high-end STEM skills. They haven't said exactly what they are, but they need them to be STEM and they need them to be high-end. So Atlanta is on that list, in part because we have Georgia Tech. So it's not because I work there, but Georgia Tech is no joke. So we have the ability to produce STEM people, however you might want to interpret that, with PhDs and high-end skills year in, year out. we can do that. But what does it really mean when a company like that comes to a city like ours and says that we can offer you 50,000 jobs where the average salary is more than $100,000 per year? The city goes nuts. All cities did. People are trying to rebrand themselves. They were like, yo, we're just going to call this Amazon Way, and we're going to name the mayor after you and all that. So everybody's prostituting themselves to get Amazon to come because they feel that somehow when this STEM economy shows up, it's going to be harps and angels and everything. All the problems are going to disappear. But the basic question is who gets access to that kind of skill set that enables them to stay as a resident in a city like that. So the Technolopolis idea is what a city will become once a company like Amazon shows up. So those people that have those STEM skills are the ones that are eligible to work in companies like Amazon. And it's not to say that everybody needs to go out and get a computer science degree or to be an engineer or to be a software engineer. I'm not prescribing that. But what I am saying, though, is that the kind of jobs that these people are talking about, 50,000 at a time, require some kind of basic technical skills. We can all agree on that. Even if you want to study English these days, you can do computational English. You see what I mean? Like, everybody knows that you can do technical things with whatever it is that you actually want to study. So let's think now about Atlanta. Has anybody ever been to Atlanta? A lot of folks. Good. So Atlanta is the center of the modern South. But it's also a historical place. It's the home of Martin Luther King. Every time in February we hear all about it, because that's where Martin Luther King came from, and Martin Luther King is the answer to every question in a Black History Month test. But the issue is that it's a historically black city. The population in Atlanta in 2000 was 64% black. Part of the reason that somebody like me, I'm from New York, Brooklyn in particular, anybody been in East Flatbush? Word. So East Flatbush is the center of the modern universe as we know it. And part of the reason, and this is half jokes but half real, part of the reason that somebody like me would never come to a school like this is because there are not enough black people. I'm just being honest. We're just getting to know each other, but you know what I mean? I'm just telling you the truth. So I couldn't live in a city like this. Atlanta is a city that I could live in part because there are a lot of black people there. And they're also, part of the thing that I don't like about it is that they're not like New York, where they're from all over the place, because my family's from Guyana. And I can see from looking at some of you that you have African roots in various parts of the world and so on. So the diversity itself, even among black people, is quite extensive. In Atlanta, in 2000, there were 64% of the population of the city was black. And Atlanta's in the South is a bit crude. They just kind of measure people black and white. They don't have the sophistication of people in New York, but whatever. So they just measure people as black and white, and Hispanic is kind of everybody else. And that population went from 64% to 52% in 10 years, between 2000 and 2010. It was one of the fastest declines of a black population of any major metropolitan city outside of New Orleans and Detroit, both of which had catastrophes. It was also, during those 10 years, had the fastest increasing population of white people of any major metropolitan city in the United States. It was at crosshairs like that. So what's behind that? If the city, let me just this is all by way of introduction. If the city is betting its future on the arrival of Amazon, and what Amazon represents, a Technolopolis. We need companies, industries that require people with technical skills to be able to vest our future. If the city is betting its future on companies like Amazon, on an economy that Amazon represents, on a people with the skill sets that make them eligible to work in those kinds of companies, then we're betting our future on a certain kind of people with a certain kind of education. So therein lies the problem. The question is, who has that kind of education? So the city is betting its future on the people with these kinds of skills. And let me just say a little quick word about what those kinds of skills actually are, because it was intriguing to me. Notwithstanding the fact that I got a little fancy education just like you too. So I went to Berkeley up the street. Some of you may have heard of it. Then And then that's not trivial. So this thing about these kinds of schools, when Amazon says that they want highly technically skilled students, or graduates rather, if you think about some of the companies that some of you may be angling to work at, their recruitment strategies are from elite schools. So just because you have a computer science degree or an engineering degree, what have you, if you get it from Harvey Mudd versus, or at Berkeley, for example, or at Stanford, or you get it from those caliber schools, it's an entirely different thing than if you were to get it from such and such community college or such and such state college or Western whatever state college. You all know that. But let me just say it out loud so we can all be clear. So the challenge that we're facing then is that the students and the people and communities that have access to the most elite kind of education are the people, students, and communities that are going to be present in the future of those cities. Without that kind of education, the likelihood of your being able to be present in a modern Technopolis goes down precipitously. And I would argue that this crosshairs that I mentioned about the population in Atlanta is an exact demonstration of that fact. And this is not just kind of hocus pocus conspiracy theories. Also, you can go up the street to San Francisco and search for the people of color. You can look for them block by block. And when I was there in the 90s, I'm old. I'm like a 25-year-old adult. I turned 21 25 years ago. So the thing about this at Cal was that those communities were all there. But they're not now. There's certain areas in Brooklyn on Franklin Avenue and Schenectady and Newkirk where you would never find white people. But now they got single white women walking dogs on Franklin Avenue. I'm like, for real? How did you get here? But those are the transformations that I'm talking about. So here's what I wanted to do. I want to assess what's really happening in a way that I find disturbing for sure, but I don't know the answer to it. I'm not sure how you reverse the innumerable amount of social factors that make it difficult for an entire population of people to have at least equal opportunity to get that kind of education. Because you have to agree that getting into schools like this is not necessarily all about your own aptitude. Some of it is luck. Some of it is just who your parents were. Some of it is just where you happened to be at the right time and you just felt good on the right day and things happened and it all worked out. I'm not disputing, obviously, your competence, but you have to agree that you can't be the only people in the world that are as bright as you are. I mean, certainly that's not true. So then, what is it exactly that goes on? So let me tell you this Atlanta story a little bit more. Colleen gave me this thing and the batteries at the back are broken. So if I drop the batteries and it doesn't work, it's not my fault. Oop. Bam. So let's talk a little bit about this. Excuse me. I'm so glad that this projector screen is so big. However, when we were testing it out in the beginning, I was like, yo, this projector is really big. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to make me a little bit nervous. But what it does provide is clarity. And they tell you when you're talking publicly, you have to be clear. Say what you're going to say it, and then say what you said so that everybody can understand exactly what it is that you said. You see me? So that's what we're going to do. So here, this is the segregation thing that you Californians might not know much about. Because as a state, there is everybody here for sure, if you think about the state in its totality. But in individual cities, California is not very diverse. Just by sheer numbers. But Atlanta is. So when we're talking now, the concern that I have is about this segregation problem. And this is one of the things that I find a bit complicated. Because I think integration is something that matters. As people, we should be able to interact with each other just based on our common interests, our shared goals. We talk to each other, what have you. We find out the things between us that we share, the things between us that we differ on, and then we dialogue about those things, out of which that richness comes friendship. So on one hand, I'm an integrationist, kind of a humanist. But then as a practical matter, I also, here again, I'm telling you just the truth. Like, I don't have very close friends who are white. I just don't. And it's not to say, let me be clear because it's probably being recorded. It's not to say that I made that choice. I don't want to talk to white people. Obviously, that's not, I mean, I think you can already tell that that's not how I operate. But as a matter of cultural practice or some kind of social rules that are unwritten, that's become the case for me. Beverly Tatum used to be the president of Spelman College. She has this book called Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria? And more often than not, if you go into a public school and you walk into the cafeteria, you can see where everybody sits. It's by tribes, not necessarily by color, but it's tribal. Either the sports people or this other group that does what have you. So this is one of the substantive problems that we're addressing here. This thing shows you Atlanta is the second most segregated city in the United States. Anybody take a guess on what the most segregated city is? Who? Boston is Chicago. Chicago is a beast. Chicago has lines drawn all through it, and you decide where you're going to be, and then that's it. So Atlanta, like I said, I told you it's about 60% black people and 30-something% white, right? So it does have a lot of different kinds of people. It's a very diverse city. So in order for segregation to even be relevant, you have to first be diverse. But diversity, that's another one of those words like STEM. We kick this diversity thing around like it's this thing. Oh, we're so diverse, and we want such diversity and whatever. Let me tell you about this story, this diversity thing. So I've been on the, I think I told the story before, but I'm going to tell it again, because they invited me to come all the way out here. So this diversity thing, I was on the brochure of every school that I've ever been to. And so the jokes part of it is, because, when you're young, your age, it went to my head. I was like, yo, it's because I'm cute. Of course I want to be in a brochure. But the reality was, they wanted to say, well, we can educate a young African-American male because they're very hard to educate. So we have one, and he's smart. Let's put him on the brochure. So that was really what was going on. So that was in my high school because I did the engineering program. And I was fancy. I was probably like, I took the AP BC calculus in the 11th grade, and I was just like, yo, can't nobody touch me. You know what I mean? And then when Berkeley came at me, for real, it went to my head. Like, my whole head was swollen out to here. And then I got on the brochure there, too. But then, of course, I bumped into Physics 7A, and I was like, well, hold on. This is a little bit more tricky than I thought. But the reason that I'm bringing this up to say is that in the context of who these people are, in Atlanta, excuse me, we have this situation where there are a lot of different kinds of people. And they are totally segregated. So the way that this Chicago story works, and even in the context with Atlanta, what you'll see here is that in those sections that are blue, the population of those are each one of those little sections are census tracts. So within each census tract, what you'll find in the blue ones is that the population is greater than 78% white, less than 7% black, and with the brown ones, it's essentially the reverse. So those are the minimum characteristics of each of those tracts. But I can tell you, as a matter not just of anecdote, that they're even more extreme than that. A lot of those blue sections are nearly 100% white residents. And then in a lot of the sections that are black, it's almost 100% black. And it's reflected in the schools, it's reflected in everything. So, with this basic premise about the segregation, remember what I was saying. I think in my heart and in my instinct is to be a humanist, to be connected to people based just on the idea that we have something in common. It really shouldn't matter. I'm just saying this in honesty. It really shouldn't matter what we look like. But the reality is the way that people live and the lives that we actually lead in this major metropolitan city that's courting Amazon headquarters too is totally segregated. Completely. Restaurants, clubs, parks. There's another little story that I told you folks last time I was here. It's a little crass, so don't judge me, but this is how it went. My daughter and I, she's now 14, but at the time she was 12. And we have this thing called the Beltline in Atlanta. It's really nice. It's just kind of a connected sidewalk that joins all these different neighborhoods. It's really, really pretty. So we were out there, and as you can also tell, I'm conscious of this race stuff. So I'm always looking, where the black people at? But we were out there, we were eating sandwiches. It was a Sunday afternoon, it was a beautiful day, it was springtime, just the two of us. My wife was somewhere. And we were just tallying. This is the part that's a little stupid. Don't judge me. I was like, yo, let's just count the number of dogs versus the number of black people. Don't judge me. At the time, we were just going through graphing. So that was really the objective, was to just deal with graphs. But what we end up finding out was that the ratio of dogs to black people on that particular day, it was about 14 to 1. So in that particular section of Atlanta where we were in Midtown, there really aren't any black people. There are more dogs on this beltline than there were black people. And the reason that I bring that up is to say that it's that deep. I mean, you feel it everywhere you go, in the supermarkets, all of that. But what are the implications of that? The implications of that are this. So you could argue that that kind of segregation doesn't really matter. People choose to live wherever they want. This is the argument, this is the counter-argument that you'd often hear. People decide by choice, by preference, where they want to live. If they want to be tribal, so be it. And there's an element of that argument that I agree with. We shouldn't try to socially engineer where people live and who their friends are and who they socialize with. People should be allowed to do whatever they want. Individual autonomous choice is supreme. But that's not what's happening. The choices that people are making to make them segregate like this is not because they want to just be with their tribe. It's because, in part, they don't have the facility to make the choices that everybody else has. And what I'm going to keep repeating is how this Amazon and STEM education becomes a part of this. So what this graph is showing you, and I'm glad it's so big, these correlate to the census tracts that were on the previous slide. So what these are is basically, as it says, this is the percentage of the population that's 25 years or older with a bachelor's degree or better, right? On the bottom, versus the median household income. You absorbing it? This is another one of those things that they do when they tell you, when you're like young faculty, stop, pause, let the people absorb it, and then start talking. So this is that pause. These are all like tips I'm just giving you for free. So what this is saying, the thing that on the left is what you'd expect. That if the greater population of people in your census tract have a lot of college education, you'd expect that the median household incomes in those census tracts would be greater, right? That's kind of the expectation. That's the American story. You go to college, you get a better job, you make more money, and everybody's good. So this linear distribution is really what, to me, it looks like when you have the full spectrum of people. Some with skills, some go to school, some don't. That's how it should be. This story on the right rather, is the problem. So what this is saying is that basically, crassly put, black people in Atlanta are poor. There's only one census tract in the city of Atlanta where Martin Luther King came from, where more than half of the people have been to college, and their average household income is approaching $80,000. But the more important fact there is that there's only one where the majority of people, more than 65% of the people, are black, and more than half of them have been to college. There's only one census tract in the whole city where that's true. So think about the implications of that. Entire populations have no college education. The average household income of a black family in Atlanta is $29,000. Tell me, somebody, the cost of attending this august institution per year. $73,000 a year. Have you eaten once you've paid that $73,000 a year? All right, so food is included. All right, good. So what does this really mean? Think about this in the context of whole cities. Atlanta, Detroit, Boston, New Orleans. And this is just, I'm just choosing this because it's a personal concern of mine. But we can go down the population of people. So then our challenge is the following. With the school thing, The reason I bring this up is because I do personally believe, perhaps a little bit romantic, that education is a great equalizer. I really do think so. And let me say a little bit about that. So I think I'm one of those folks who believes that there's a distinction between being educated and being trained. So in this STEM game, often people will say that you need STEM skills. And we're quick to have these coding boot camps, and you can go out and get certified and go short-circuit the college and go get a job. And that argument is often used particularly now because college has become so expensive. And so students are graduating with uncertainty about their occupational future, but with these staggering student loan debts. So that's a real structural problem. But the other thing that I do find that's very important is what education means is not just that you're picking up particular skills, but you're learning how to interpret the world. So even though I'm a STEM dude, and I advocate it all the time and what have you, my whole career, that's what I've been doing. But I don't like the increasing number of students who are technically skilled, but they haven't read anything. They don't know anything about the world. So we have these problems with Mexico, for example, about this border, and we have an administration who doesn't understand the cultural dynamics at play. They don't know anything about the history about the relationship between Mexico and the United States, where the borders were, in which centuries, and how it's moved. They never read those books. They probably weren't trained either. But nevertheless, in places where people actually do have technical skills and don't have an appreciation for literature or comparative culture, they're uneducated people. And I, as elite as that might sound, I believe in the education piece. So what happens now when that segregation that I mentioned before trickles back into the education itself? So check this one out. Let me tell you this. I gave this presentation, not this presentation, but these particular set of slides to the Atlanta City Council 2 weeks ago. The Atlanta City Council are the elected officials who are supposed to represent the city and make us do better. They had no idea that these schools look like this. So this is what this is. So we have these 11, I think it's 11, right? Is that 11 over there? 11 regular public high schools in Atlanta. We have a number of charter schools and private schools, as you'd expect. But just the basic Atlanta public schools, there are 11 of them. In those schools, there are approximately 1,200 white students, 8,000 some change black students. And like I said, Atlanta, again, not to be crass, but it's Atlanta, so they just count everybody else as Hispanic. We don't even get into the sophistication of Asian and where you may or may not come from. We don't deal with that. Which is why I like New York so much. Like in New York, you have to know exactly where people come from. Like these categories don't mean anything. So you're like, you black? Like, no, not exactly. I'm from Guyana. Oh, and then they want to put everybody like everybody's Jamaican. No, there are more countries down there than just Jamaica. But nevertheless, here's the deal. You're familiar with 1954 significance? Anybody? Education related? Boom. If it was crickets in here, I'd be mad. For $73,000 a year, really? Anyway, so that was when official, legal, sanctioned segregation in the United States was eradicated. This was last year. We have 8 schools, high schools, regular public high schools, where not a single white student goes to school of the 11. So we only really have 3 schools in the whole system where white kids go. And I can tell you chapter and verse about the difference between these sets of schools. I'll spare you all those details, but I'll give you one story. First of all, if you look at this, this is fundamental educational segregation. There's no other way to interpret this. And I can't be convinced that it's by choice. That this kid, the black kids just decided, hey y'all, you know what? We're going to all go to these schools and let the white kids go over there. So we're just going to get this kind of education over here. Clearly that isn't what's happening. I also don't believe that the white kids did the same thing. They weren't born and say, well, we're going to only go to these schools and we're going to put a wall around it so that these other black kids can't come over here. Those kinds of things I don't really believe actually happen. But what does happen is that there is this kind of inertia about where quality lies, where educational rigor lies, and it correlates with who is in the classroom. So now, the reason that I brought up that joke about me and the brochure before was to make this point. And if I make this clear and you make the connection, then I'm going to feel fresh that I had this point way back and I bring it back now. The reason that they put me on the brochures is because the expectation is that black kids don't do well in technical fields. So when they found one that does, they were like, yo, this is miraculous. And I got interviewed by the Sloan Foundation and the NSF. The people came and they wanted to talk to me. So, young African-American male, how did you do well in calculus? I studied. Is that a trick question? You know what I mean? Like the expectation is somehow this was miraculous. So if you translate that expectation, which hasn't gone away, into this, now what are we bumping up against? We got these 8,000 students where there's no expectation of their ability to do those kinds of things. The advanced placement technical classes in all 8 of them schools, what they offer is paltry next to what they offer at the 3 where these white kids go. So one might argue, if you wanted to take the counter argument and be like, yo, if I wanted to make like a racist argument here, I'd say, well, of course the white kids do that because they're smarter than black kids. Obviously, that's a little silly. I know I'm being recorded. That was just to make the point that that argument is silly. But the reality is that that's exactly what's happening. At those schools, I went into them myself. This one, Grady. The Grady people will be mad that I'm all the way over here in the West Coast telling their business. But I'm all the way over here in the West Coast and I'm telling their business. So I went into Grady. And what's interesting about that is because when you go to high schools and you show up from these universities, especially Georgia Tech, they roll the red carpet out for you. And I also take advantage of the fact that I'm kind of tokenish in all of this. They're like, oh, that's Dr. Bobb from Georgia Tech. Wow, look. So I get in and they give me a tour of the whole school. And the segregation in the school is bananas. And I know, for those of you who have been to schools that have these kind of dimensions going on, or dynamics going on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of you may not have experienced this, but those of you who have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So in the hallway, you see what's fantastic about the next phase of our lives. You see all these kids, everybody's in there together. I mean, y'all know, y'all on your phones, and everybody's looking down and Twittering and Instagramming and whatever. But then when the bell rings, you see the insidious part of all of this. All the white kids go one way, and all the black kids go the other way. And in Atlanta, like I said, there are very few Hispanic students and Asian students, but to the extent that the Asian students partition, here's how that partition works. The Asian students who are Chinese go with the white kids, but the couple Vietnamese and Laotian students that we have, they go with the black kids, because they broke. So there's a difference that gets clouded in all of this, but I digress. So what's happening here is that in these classes in schools where this segregation is so fundamental, the level of education that these students get is partitioned exactly across the lines of who they are. So let's bring that now to what's happening with these Amazon folks. Then I'm going to wrap this up so we can have a discussion. The Amazon people are coming in. I'm just reiterating a point that I made in the beginning. They're coming in, and the city has proposed to them that we have the workforce of the future. We have the kind of technically skilled people that you need to build your engine of industry for years to come. And in saying that, and proposing that to them, and recognizing that this is also true, we're saying that we're proposing a city, the future of which is not going to include these kids that go to those 10 schools. Because we also know that those kids can't play. They can't come to Georgia Tech. They don't have what it takes to be able to participate in an Amazon industrial technopolis. And just so you know what that actually means, so this Amazon thing, they're coming to Atlanta, like I said. They've been totally secretive about what those jobs actually are. They said there are 50,000 of them. Each of them are going to have north of $100,000 salaries. I know if you make $100,000 in California, you're broke as a joke, but in Atlanta, you're good. So I looked to find out, well, what are the jobs in HQ1? Because they won't tell you anything about HQ2. So Seattle has had the same problem. Seattle tilted, and everybody without those kind of skills just fell off. I don't know where they went, but they're not in Seattle anymore, I'll tell you that. So in this HQ1, one of the positions that I saw that was available was data scientist. At its face, it seems relatively innocuous. A data scientist, okay. So then you click, what are the requirements to be a data scientist? It was really silly. You have to have a master's in computer science, minimum educational qualification. And then the part that I thought was crazy is it said a PhD would be preferred. I was like, well, excuse me. You know what I mean? Like, how many people even know somebody with a PhD in computer science? So, and that was the preferred. So I was like, all right, but okay. So if you think about who these people are, who is the tribe that has masters in computer sciences and PhDs in computer science? Who even knows people with PhDs in any subject? I mean, y'all are schooled people, but you have to know. You come from communities where they got these other cats who nobody's ever even heard of PhD. They don't even know what it is. So if they're betting our future on people with those kinds of skills and communities and tribes who have access to that kind of aspiration, if you don't come from that, your future is over. So then the question becomes, who is the citizen? Who is the citizen that we're proposing is going to be the future of the people that live in a Technolopolis? And I think it's clear. I think if you don't have those skills, you're not one of them. You're out. That means that you can't live in San Francisco anymore. You for sure can't live in New York. And let me tell you about this little San Francisco thing. So there's a part of this that I'm not allowed to say in public, so I'm just saying like this. I got this job the other day. It was kind of dope. And the lady that I was working for, can't say that either, she took me to where she lives. It's just a modest home, whatever. And I know that we're at Harvey Mudd, so a lot of y'all are probably rich. But her house was $7,250 a month to rent it. And it was like from here to there and a toilet. I'm like, yo, for real? $7,200 a month? That was crazy to me. Which is why I'm saying that if you make $100,000 a year in California, you're still broke. So the challenge then is what happens? What happens to people who can't qualify to get the kinds of jobs that enable the income, that enable them to live in cities that cost that much? So basically, if you can't afford to live in the city, and the city is projecting a future that requires a certain skill set for a certain level of income, the city is telling you that we don't want you here. And you also know, in places like San Francisco, Seattle, New York, and even Atlanta to some case, Oakland, there's a tremendous homeless problem. People who have been locked out, they're living on the street underneath 880. With permanent toilets now because there's so many of them, they don't even know what to do with them. This is the real deal. This is not theoretical. So one class of people that at least has the minimum working abilities to just move and live somewhere at least less expensive, they will do that. The next level down, they're out. They're homeless. They're done. The methamphetamines and this, what's the name of this drug thing that's killing everybody? Opioids. My proposition here to you today is that that's a manifestation of this problem too. If you can't have a way and a foothold into the new technical economy or into a new way of living, you have nothing left. So you turn to what makes you feel good, and ultimately you drown. That's the problem I think that we're facing. And then how does it manifest itself? I know I've been talking a lot about color and such. And I often, this is to throw some rocks at white people just so that y'all feel good too. So here's this, this challenge that we're also facing. At Georgia Tech, I want to universalize this problem. So I realize that this stereotype threat thing is real. So I don't like presenting all this doom and gloom stuff about black people, because when I was a student and listening to people come in and talk about, you blacks don't do well in the SAT, you don't do well in this, you don't do well in that, I'm like, damn, really? I can do it. You know what I mean? It gets tiring. However, the reality is, at Georgia Tech's College of Computing, we crossed this threshold the other day. So this is just the population of the undergraduate students. So we had, in 2015, 16, it was the first time in the history of Georgia Tech, in the history of the College of Computing, that there were more Asian students than white students in any college or any department at all, in the undergraduate level. It's the first time. So what was interesting about that? So first, you can see that that trajectory for Asian students is not turning around. So not only was that the first time that there were more Asian students than white students, it's the last time that there are going to be more white students than Asian students. So the entire fabric of the department has changed. And what this data includes are international students. Last year was the first time that there were more domestic resident, permanent residents and citizen Asian students. There were more of them. If you just exclude international Asian students, there were more of the domestic Asian students than white students too. So what does that really mean? On its face, to me, it doesn't really mean anything. But what it does mean is that the segregation that's happening is manifesting itself in multiple different ways. And somehow, in the end, the quality of your education, whether it be institutional, cultural, or some combination thereof, is correlated with race. And that's a problem. And it has major implications on who is going to exist in these cities as we go forward. And let me tell you some of the threats before we get happy again. So the threats to this are, this is what causes the backlash. This is what causes people angst. And this anti-philosophy, anti-whoever you are. And more often than not, I think it's the perceived threat on the ability to be a citizen, however you might define that, that's causing all of this angst. It's causing us to say we need to build a wall and keep these illegals out. Calling people illegals, how crass is that? But ultimately, it's the fear of some limited set of resources, and that somehow the perception is that this concept of citizen is a right. And without it, we're in trouble. So the implications of it are all of those things. So, what I wanted to propose, some of that was grim for sure. But what I wanted to do was to present the relationship between citizen as we conceive of it. And I personally don't conceive of it as something that's particularly litigious. I don't necessarily agree in the concept of a legal national born in a nation state, and therefore you're endowed with all of these particular rights or what have you. That exists for sure. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any borders. But what I am saying, though, is that we have to consider what it means to just be responsible to each other. And if the level of segregation that we're operating under limits the extent to which we can be responsible to each other because we don't see a responsibility to somebody from the other tribe, then we're all in trouble. And the reason that we're all in trouble is because when Amazon comes to Atlanta and decides that this is the particular tribe that's going to exist, all of these homeless people and everybody else who gets left out, they're going to be pissed. And at a certain point, the fragility of the system is going to crack. And that's when things erupt. And I'm not proposing doom and gloom, but I am saying that if you think about the confluence of pressures that these cities are under, the people who don't have access, looking at institutions like this and seeing students coming to school for $73,000 a year and they only make $29,000 a year in a family of 4, at a certain point that anger turns to rage. There are examples of it all over the world. I don't need to belabor you with that. So my charge is the same now as it was before. I think our collective responsibility is to determine what our responsibility is. In this game, I'm going to finish with this little story. In this game, ultimately, I think we have to conceive of what citizenry means. We have to have a working definition of it that makes sense for us. And in my view, it has to do just with the fact that we're responsible to each other because we're both here, and that's enough. But then here's the other part. The other part is that we have this kind of class problem too, obviously. So I was talking to Colleen on the way in. I saw this in the Times. They had this thing, a paper, in the paper about these kids who take these luxury jets on college to tour college campuses. Anybody seen that? Yes? Anybody? Well, let me explain to the rest of y'all who don't read the paper. So this private jet company, they offer college tours. Did y'all go on college tours, or you just decided that Harvey Mudd was it and you just came here and that was it? You went on college tours? Bad. Before I tell my story, did any of you go on one of these private jet college tours? I'm not trying to out you. If I was you, I wouldn't say anything anyway. I'd be like, whatever. That tour was dumb, but I'm not going to tell you about it. Anyway, so here's how those tours work. So these families who have a whole bunch of money, at a minimum, they cost $30,000. And you take this tour, and they fly you to whatever school. It's a private jet, so you don't have to deal with security or TSA or Clear or whatever. Nobody's going to pat you down. You go straight onto the tarmac, you get on your fancy plane, and on that plane greets you a college counselor who is steeped in the information and historical implications of the particular college that you would like to see. I bet you they write the applications for you too, but whatever, they don't say that in the paper. So you go, and you go visit your college. Then you get the particular paraphernalia, you get your little college shirt, and you get the counseling and the advice about what particular classes to take and how to do and what you need to do in the profile of the freshman. You get all that in this private plane that's dope. I've never been on a private plane, but I saw it in the paper, and it looks nice. I mean, if I had to loot, I might try it. But the thing is, what does that rift mean? Let's say I'm 17 years old, and I'm broke as a joke. I'm bright, but I'm broke. And I read that in the paper about these rich kids who are spending $30,000 to just go on tour of a school that they may or may not get into because they would like to see it in advance of their perusal. I'm smoked. So now if I, by hook or by crook, get into that school and then I meet one of them jokers on campus, we got problems. You see what I mean? And I'm not proposing that this is a solution. But what I am saying is that those are real tensions. And the division between people, these citizens who have and those who don't, is becoming increasingly glaring, obvious, and obscene. So the segregation that's at the centerpiece of this whole theme that I'm giving you facilitates that. So this is the part where they say, repeat what you said. I'm saying that there's a question about who is the citizen in a modern technopolis. I operationalize the technopolis as the kind of cities that are now courting these technical companies. Not just Amazon, the whole suite of them. It requires a certain kind of education. The education in the major cities is bifurcated by class and race. Therefore, the implications about who has a future in these cities is equally bifurcated by class and race. So the danger that we're facing is that the major metropolitan cities will become homogenous in ways that filter through that system. And we can't really have that. Because at the same time, we're reaching an inflection point where the number of people who are Americans, regardless of where they come from, is changing. The face of the country is changing. But at the same time, the filtration system is anchored to an old homogeneity. So that's our charge. To you, the charge is, and to me, it's the same. How do we develop a sense of responsibility to try to undo this narrative that we're living in? So with that, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you very much. Okay.
That's your goal?
Sure. Yeah. Apparently we have time to talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, concerns? Content, stylistic? What's up? Don't ask me anything that I can't answer.
Do you think that every
that doesn't count.
City is going to become one of those technopolises? Or are you going to have some cities that become technopolises, become mostly white or Asian, and then you're going to have some cities that are further segregated, and instead of having segregation within cities, have a total separation?
Well, I don't know. But I do think that in the major cities that are currently attractive for reasons that are obvious, just about their livability and so on and so forth. Those are the places where these companies want to be, in part because they know that that's where the people who want to work there want to live. So I think to that extent, it's a repeating cycle. But I do think, we haven't discussed rural America at all, but I do think that there is going to be a fundamental segregation between those cities that have the educational infrastructure, notwithstanding who those people may be, that can attract these kinds of companies. It's already happened. And those that can't. And those that can't will either try to catch up in ways through economic development or what have you, or they'll just be left behind. And what remains to be seen is whether we kind of as a country have the innovative wherewithal to develop a broader spectrum of an industrial base such that we're not entirely dependent on those kinds of technical service companies. But it's a challenge for sure. And the rural kids, we haven't even talked about them.
So what can we, as presumably mostly future citizens of these technopolises, actually do to combat this? Do you have any ideas?
I do have several. So one, I think, is to, and this is kind of the academic response, but one, I think, is to be clear about developing a sense of responsibility. So the part of that story that was not a joke with the plane was that there's a question about what it is that the country, what is it that you owe to the country or that you owe to the city? How do you find mechanisms to contribute rather than consume? And those are individual decisions that happen day to day. And those things don't have to be grand. But I do think that having a sense of service and a sense of contribution as a rather than one of consumption is something that individual people can do. And when we were here having this conversation the last time, the issue at hand was what is the responsibility of the elite? And the responsibility of the elite in some cases is to make it plain what this division actually is. Because those who know, I think, and don't say are culpable in making this whole thing kind of disappear. So to me, one is the knowledge, and then the other is making those iterative decisions when you can about making a contribution instead of just deciding what it is that I can get from this whole thing. Please.
Hey, that was a great talk. I guess in conversations with education and race, the topic of affirmative actions get brought up a lot. And I was just wondering, asking about your opinion on the impact, either positive or negative, or like the cultural aspect of affirmative action that has played in the role of like this new modern, American cities and urban cities and so forth.
Well, first, you're right. This affirmative action thing has been around for a long time, since '68, I think, and it's been always contentious. So as you know, the prevailing view is that it's giving seats to students of color, primarily, who don't deserve them. So that's the dominant narrative on one side. The other is that it's righting historical wrongs and trying to countervail discriminatory practices that are some explicit and some implicit. So first, I think what's interesting right now is that we're in a strange moment. As you probably know, Harvard is being attacked by the charges that they're discriminating against Asian students. So what's interesting to me about that is that the argument against it is that it has to be a strictly meritocratic decision-making process, and education is one of those things that is ubiquitous. Everybody has equal opportunity, and therefore the meritocratic decision is the only thing that matters. That's the argument that everybody wants to use against it, especially when it was determined or when it was perceived that it was benefiting black and Hispanic students. Absolutely. If you can't do well on a test, you can't come. It's a meritocratic society. That's how it works. That was the complete counter-argument to it. But here's the problem now. You saw my graph. So all of a sudden, white students, if we're just basing it strictly on those kind of standardized exams, on average, don't do as well as Asian students. So those same communities, primarily of conservative, right-wing, anti-affirmative action folks, who tended to be white, not all of them, that were making arguments in defense of the meritocratic system, are now befuddled because it doesn't benefit their own kids. So now we have to come up with a new way. And here's an interesting that's also happened. At the same time, this part that I'm telling you now is purely speculative. I have no evidence to support what I'm saying. So keep that on recording. We're considering, the elite Research 1 institutions are considering doing away with the SATs. That we won't consider them anymore. So one argument is in support of diversity, because individual students are not determined, I mean, your potential is not determined obviously by these single tests, right? I mean, we understand that. That's one argument. And I believe in that argument, that we should assess a portfolio of your accomplishments and who you are and so on and so forth. The other argument, this is the speculative part, is that the reason that that has come up now is because white students can't compete with Asian students on the SATs. So now, white communities could be like, well, let's change the rules. SAT doesn't really matter that much, because my kids can't get in. And I have the graph. There's a graph from the Brookings Institute that shows the chart of the math SAT scores of black students, white students, Hispanic students, and Asian students. Those 4 groups. And Asian students, by proportion, smash everybody else on the math section of the SATs. I'm not getting into reasons, I'm just giving you the data. And institutions like Georgia Tech, if you want to come and do college of computing work, you have to get at least a 1550 in the SATs to come. We're not even going to talk to you if you don't have that, if you don't have those scores. So basically 700 plus is where the conversation begins. And increasingly, the proportion of white students who have those scores relative to Asian students is going down. So one kind of conspiracy response to that would be, if I'm looking at the whole system and I'm trying to play with the puppet wires, forget about the SATs. Now let's look at the whole student, where'd they come from. So I think that the affirmative action argument is certainly a part of this, but I also think that the demographics are changing so dramatically that the fundamental tenets of affirmative action are no longer the same. I think that the students who have been historically discriminated against, black students in particular, Hispanic students increasingly, certainly students who are coming from Middle Eastern backgrounds now, the discriminatory practices against them are alive and well. But now what the country is grappling with is what to do with white students who are not doing well, relative to Asian students who are American born. We haven't figured out how to deal with that yet. And that, I think, is central to what's going to happen going forward. What was the question here?
Go ahead. Okay. What does Atlanta look for you? Like, what is the ideal Atlanta? What's the Atlanta of your dreams? If you could just snap your fingers and have
it look like Brooklyn. But that's real talk. I really do think that Brooklyn is the dopest place in the entire world. It's not very pretty, but it's just, you know what I mean? It's just. But I think that the thing about Atlanta that I do like is that it's beautiful. It's green. It's a very lush city and so on and so forth. But what I don't like is this segregation. You feel it everywhere. And so what I was saying before is that I don't know. I mean, I'm a contributor to it. Like, I don't really have close friends who are, like, I don't hang out with white people. And I should. If I want to see a different kind of city, then I need to do that. So I think for me, it's a personal challenge as well as a collective challenge. And like I said, it's not because I'm choosing to do this versus that. I mean, I guess I am at some level, but I don't consciously, like, I don't like white people, so I'm not going to, I mean, I don't think that way. But I do think the Atlanta of my dreams would be one where those 2 charts that I showed you are the same. Where the spectrum of people, based on aptitude and based on interest and ambition and whatever, is randomly distributed and is linearly related to their income, and then their lives reflect that difference. If we had that, and you couldn't pick communities and decide, well, this is broke and therefore I kind of know who lives there, if that was missing, I'd like it. Brooklyn ain't like that either, but that's Brooklyn of my dreams too. Yes?
Colleen, can you do one over here and then the microphone back? I can sort of see the cycle of poverty from the graph. Like, if you're coming from an African family, usually, based on the data, you won't have as high income as a white family. Then that means that you can't really provide the same amount of academic resources for your children. For example, college counseling or SAT, ACT prep class, or AP prep class. That means your kids can't really take the AP classes in their school, and that causes academic resources to be kind of segregated in Atlanta. I'm just thinking what you mentioned, what we as individuals can do. What about what can we make the system do? What can we make the schools do to provide maybe more supportive programs for people who are minorities or who haven't been receiving the same amount of resources?
So, let me interject a piece into that answer that you didn't ask, just because I don't like the idea that, I introduced the subject, but I don't like the idea that there's a correlation between black and poor and you just put those things together in your mind. So what we haven't really talked about, for example, are Appalachian whites. There are a lot of really broke white folks that are living in Western Virginia and so on in the central parts of the country that are really struggling under the same kind of grind. But we typically don't see those things together. Certainly in Atlanta you don't see them, depending on what cities you live in. But your question is, what should the system do? So there's the individual agency, and at some point it has to aggregate into what the system as a policy infrastructure and an infrastructure can do. And it implicates the distinction between equity and equality. And in my view, equity is something where you have equal infrastructures, such that you can have the potential for equal outcomes. So the whole point of my center at Georgia Tech, it's narrowly constrained to computing, but I looked at this same set of data that I showed you, and I was like, it doesn't make sense that all of those schools where these black kids are, they don't have any access to computer science at all. Nothing. Whereas those 3 schools with the white kids have, not only do they have computer science, but they have AP computer science. So my thing was to build the infrastructure to equate that. So what we did is, my proposition is that we don't have enough teachers who can do CS stuff. That's not special to any particular kind of school. More often than that's just kind of a ubiquitous problem. So we're trying to build the technical corollaries such that teachers can facilitate the computing education through the online infrastructure that we at Georgia Tech provide. So while it's narrowly constrained to that particular subject, the thinking behind it is that if we're really trying to change this dynamic, we have to do something structural. And this is my innovation to try to address that. And then ultimately all these other factors are things that we have to be concerned about, but I think the question that your colleague up there was asking first about what can you do, that was my answer for myself. I can do that. And that's what I'm trying to do. Please.
Hi.
Sorry.
I do have a question, but first I'd like to say, as a product of a Southern public school system, I wanted to thank you for your discussion of students going separate ways in the hallway, because it's very apparent and also totally ignored, at least in my experience. My question, though...
I want to say thank you for validating what I'm saying, because sometimes when I say it, people are like, yeah, whatever, you don't know. But you said it. You're a Southern white dude. I believe you.
My question, though, is in many Technopolises, it seems like instead of addressing this side of issues, cities are addressing lowering the impact of corporations. I'm specifically thinking about San Francisco's recently made it illegal to build office buildings with cafeterias to promote jobs and things among the cities. How do you think those compare to this other point of impact?
Well, I didn't know about that. It sounds ridiculous to me, but to try to somehow prevent inequity from being as glaring by building office buildings without cafeterias, is that what you said? God. So I think that's silly. Put that on record. But I do think, though, that as a functional matter, what that's trying to do is basically mask wealth. So I'm just trying to hide the fact from you that my life is nice, and so therefore you won't be as mad at me. That's insincere fundamentally. What I need to do is to help you get to the stage where we can both actually afford to go to the cafeteria, not just shut the cafeteria down. That's stupid. So to me, I think what cities are trying to do, and I don't know that I have seen, to be frank, a really strong solution to this problem. Because at its root, there's the education game. We have Betsy DeVos going all around the world saying there should be school choice and charter schools and whatever. So they present the argument as if school choice is some panacea. And the idea that communities, individuals, students, families should have choice is a good one. On its face, we would all agree with that. But what they don't also say is that if I'm giving you a glass of water that's nasty, and then another glass of water that has shards of glass in it, and then I give you a choice between the two of those, yes, you have choice, but the choices that you've been given, they both suck. And so what they're not doing is trying to fundamentally address what these actual structural problems are. And in schools like yours, Grady, North Atlanta, Marietta City High School, Brooklyn, I can go down the list. It takes the responsibility of somebody in the school to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because a lot of times what ends up happening, here's a structural thing. You're familiar with the gifted programs? I don't know how it works in California, but in Georgia, they have these gifted programs. You can take a test when you're 5 years old and get into this gifted thing. More often than not, the schools that white kids go to, they give it to those kids right away. So in the kindergarten, somehow they become gifted. I have no idea what a 5-year-old does to be gifted, but they're gifted. And that gifted designation stays with them the whole time. It's like it's like a felony. So once gifted, you're always gifted. I'm saying. And then what it does, it determines the classes that you get into. So if you end up taking algebra in the 8th grade, that puts you on track to take calculus in the 12th. So you may or may not be able to handle it, but because you're gifted, you're just given that option. You can opt out if you want to, but you're given the opt-in. If you're not designated as gifted, you have to battle and move heaven and earth to get into one of those classes. And then you end up perhaps not taking algebra at all until the 10th grade. And if you don't take algebra until the 10th grade, you can't take calculus in the 12th. And I just learned at lunch that if you don't take calculus in the 12th grade, you can't even come to Harvey Mudd. You cannot come. There's nothing for you. That's a structural barrier. And those kids who have the potential, but because they didn't get the gifted test when they were 5 years old, they can't come. They're locked out. They can't come to Tech either. We don't have anything for you. So think about the structural implications of a 5-year-old taking some gifted exam that God knows who wrote. And then all of a sudden, their trajectory is off in one direction. This other 5-year-old is off that way. That's a school decision. If I'm the principal of the school, nobody's taking this test. Or if I cannot trash the test, everybody takes it. Mandatory. And unless something's wrong with you when you're 5 years old, then I'll provide some services for you. But save that, you're all gifted. Boom. Just check them. Gifted, and everybody keeps going on their merry way. So to me, that's the problem. But that thing in San Francisco, I didn't know about it. You're going to have to tell me about that, because I think that's crazy. You know what I mean? That's just dumb. Please.
Cool.
I'm good.
I feel like as Black people in higher education, one of the narratives that's kind of often pushed upon us is that we kind of make it out of the hood and then have to achieve all this success and then go back and kind of uplift the rest of our community, which for one just puts a lot of pressure on Black people in higher education. But what do you see as the role that Black people who do have the privilege to have resources like this, to the communities that they came from?
Well, that's a good point. And first, I disagree that should be somehow we have this onerous task of just carrying the whole, you know what I mean? There are a lot of Black people, 40 million Black people. If I had to carry them all, I'm mad skinny, you know what I mean? I can't do that. But I think the idea of operationalizing what it means to be responsible as citizens, if we were to put that as a framework and a hallmark of what higher education is, then it's something that's equally distributed. But the way that we carry on this narrative is that we equate poverty with people of color, and then somehow they are supposed to miraculously be more responsible to the communities from which they came than everybody else. That gives everybody else a pass. That gives them rich kids on the plane a pass. They don't have to do anything. And I don't think that's fair. In fact, I think it's insulting, because they have the most to give and the least responsibility to do so. So to me, if you put the whole thing as a premise for what higher education, not training, means, then it's all of our responsibility to give back. So you, rich white kid, don't have to go back and give to the rich community that you came from. You're just giving to the city that you live in. And your responsibility to me and my community is the same as my responsibility to me and your community. And I think with that shared sense of responsibility, we redefine what it means to be a citizen. And the only way to get there, as a structural matter, I think, is we have to break some of these segregation barriers. Because that's the thing where I don't see you as you. Because if I grow up in a white school, if I go to Morningside Elementary School, and then I go to Inman Middle, then I go to Grady High School, then I come to Harvey Mudd, or I go to Georgia Tech, or Berkeley, or Stanford, or, I mean, I could list them all until 9:15. I don't have to see black people. I for sure don't have to see Hispanic people. And then therefore I don't develop any sense of human relationship with these people. So why would I feel responsible to them? And that's where I think the difference is. The higher education's responsibility is to make sure that we all feel a sense of responsibility to each other, regardless of who we are. And it's not a special burden on you, black man from the hood. And that narrative kills me, as if we all come from some damn hood. You know what I mean? Brooklyn is not a hood. Whatever. But for me, the responsibility is to all of us. Shared that, I think we win. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
So is the resolution of this crisis that everybody gets a STEM degree?
No, not a STEM degree, an engineering degree. I don't know what the resolution is. This is, man. I think it's kind of. I think we're kind of in a critical moment. We were talking at lunch about the possibility that America could fail. So I'm an Obama stalwart. I ended up getting to serve on my brother's keeper task force. So when you're around this dude, first of all, I think it's terrible to be a man in the Obama era, because like they don't make men like that. So everybody else is just like second. You know what I mean? So I'm like, he's too smooth, he's too good looking, he's too smart, it's just too much of everything. But that aside, the thing that was interesting about it was the collection of folks that are bright and focused on being bright and focusing on, when he was leaving the White House, his last thing when he went to Chicago, he said he's leaving the presidency and taking on his most significant responsibility as citizen. And the whole Obama Foundation is based on operationalizing what citizen means. And in that discussion, he, as you remember, I used to think it was hokey, because he's always like, oh, believe in the American story and the democracy, whatever, you're just campaigning. But I get the impression that he really did believe it, does believe it. And the threat is that the American story is not guaranteed. So it is a crisis. And it is possible that we can fail. Venezuela is failing right now. I mean, there are countries that are older than we are that totally fail. I don't think we will, but I think it's possible. I think big sections of the country could fail. So our responsibility is to be cognizant of that. And ultimately, like I said before, is to not take for granted the success of the country, but rather feel a sense of commitment to it. Commitment as citizens, commitment as kind of nation builders, and responsible to each other. That sounds like a nice way to wrap it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, that does sound like a nice wrap up. Thanks, Kamau.